Hello everyone, I'm number one Marmaduke fan. Summa Triggerum, Summa Spoilerum, Summa Tangentum. I haven't done an Adventures in Fake News in a while, and I read some newspapers while having dinner. And there were a few articles that annoyed me, some articles about radical social justice feminist clubs for middle schoolers paid for by you, the taxpayer. Articles, fluff pieces essentially on young eighth grade students being radicalized and raising the socialist fist of resistance and revolution, and how cool it is for kids to be getting involved in radical politics. But this one really took the cake. This is a movie review of Hostiles by Marianne Johansson. And what movie review would be complete without a little casual racism, courtesy of the very fake news? So I'm just going to read some portions of this. Oh, I got to do a voice. So Marianne Johansson, I'm just going to imagine a typical millennial wrote this one. You know what the real white man's burden is? Living with the guilt of the colonialism, oppression, and genocide you are party to. I mean, look at North America. Sure, millions of native people dead and ancient cultures destroyed, but who has to live with that? All the good soldiers who were just following orders, that's who. No one talks about that, do they? Won't someone think of the white man? Scott Cooper is thinking of the white man in Hostiles, his revisionist western that revises the genre right back to the white man's perspective, where it belongs. Oh, there will be lessons to be learned by the white man. Lessons about how being a racist murderer weighs down on a white man, about how giving in to feelings about the things he's done, air quotes, will be difficult and painful, and really, isn't the biggest crime in all this how the white man is forced to suppress his emotions and his humanity, how he suffers while making the others suffer? So if you haven't guessed it yet, the reference is made to white people at about a million miles a minute here. And what first caught my eye about this opening paragraph is essentially Marianne Johnson using the concept of the white man's burden, accusing this movie of perpetuating the white man's burden. But really, what this illustrates is the woke, intersectional, progressive left's essentially agreement with the white man's burden concept. In the 1800s, the white man's burden meant that white people must shoulder additional burdens to help other people outside of Anglo-Saxon countries. So we must work harder to do good charity to help these poor countries. And in progressive social justice, the white man's burden is the burden of colonialism and the burden of having done all this evil stuff that only whiteness and only the white cis heteronormative patriarchy is responsible for. So the thing I hate about this review is I don't know if SJW's hating a movie is enough to get me to like it, but so I may go watch this movie, Hostiles, and not like it that much. Maybe they have a progressive message to their movie. But what Marianne Johnson has convinced me of is that I at least need to see Hostiles, because the reason she hates Hostiles, based on her description of it, is that this is a human story of redemption, in which Christian Bale's character begins the movie as someone who is willing to kill Native Americans, and over the course of the movie comes to recognize the humanity of, I don't even like the term Native Americans, American Indians. That's the word I like for it. So that's what I'm going to use. Native Americans is a BS term which doesn't describe any tribe. Use either the tribe names, or if you speak of, if I speak about Indians as a general group, I'm going to use that term, because screw Marianne Johnson. So this sounds like a human redemption story, and what Marianne Johnson is objecting to is that this is told from a white man's perspective, and that essentially it erases the evils of the white man. So let's continue on. So she kind of summarizes the story of what Captain Joseph J. Blocker is going through, that he's got to deliver the Cheyenne chief Yellow Hawk, who is dying of cancer, to his home so that he can die in peace. And he has to do this as his last mission as a soldier, even though he's reticent to do this and he has no love for the savages. Now, it's noteworthy that Marianne Johansson puts these quotes. She makes sure to highlight these quotes calling Indian savages. I think because Marianne Johansson is trying to reinforce the point that that Hostiles is a terrible racist movie that ignores Indians and actually cares about white people. And so she's using these quotes to try to suggest the idea that this movie is triggering and problematic. But in the context of the movie, Christian Bale's character expressing these sentiments makes sense. It makes sense historically for an American soldier to not have much love for American Indians he's been fighting a war with. It makes sense if he calls them savages or says that there's no or wants revenge against them for all the fighting he's done in the past with them. So it makes sense at the beginning of this character's story for him to hold these feelings of animosity. So how does the story continue from this early point? Now, I know it sounds like Hostiles is suggesting that the white man isn't in fact happy as a June bug to be slaughtering people for not being white, but I'd hate for you to think that the film does anything too radical, like present Yellowhawk and his family as complicated human beings or anything. So this sentence, I think, is a carrot in the cookie jar. Prior to this has been describing the plot of the movie, and then suddenly it uses this overly complicated sentence to say that the movie, you got to read it again because it's so poorly written, it's hard to quite get what Marianne Johansson is getting at first. I know it sounds like Hostiles is suggesting that the white man isn't, in fact, happy as a June bug to be slaughtering people for not being white. But, so what Marianne Johansson is saying is that the movie suggests that the white man is happy as a June bug to be slaughtering people for not being white, and then says it's not at all a radical movie. So does Marianne Johansson want a radical movie where white people are not happy to slaughter non-white people just for the sake of slaughtering them? The point is obscured. I don't know whether or not Marianne Johansson thinks that historically white people were just as happy as a June bug to go out and slaughter everyone who isn't white, and that's the fault of the poor writing here, not communicating the point. But it just seems odd to me that this idea of white people being happy as a June bug to slaughter people just comes out of the middle of nowhere. I don't want to ascribe this view to Marianne without being sure, and it's her fault for writing this so unclearly and not mine. But as written, I have no clue whether Marianne thinks that all white people as a race enjoy murdering people who are not white or not. So let's speak to the point of this movie. I haven't seen this movie, by the way. I'm going to go watch it now that I've read this terrible review. But let's speak to whether Yellowhawk and his family are portrayed as complicated human beings or anything. Well, do they need to be? Do we need to see Blackhawk's backstory and see all the multiple sides of his personality in this movie? Is it important for Christian Bale to identify with Blackhawk based on Blackhawk having a complicated personality, or is it just enough for Christian Bale to identify with this person as a human being without us needing to know everything about the human being he is identifying with? If the character is a secondary character and the point of the movie is a person learning to end racism, to stop being racist, to love people and treat them as human beings regardless of their race or skin color, then it is enough for the humans he is learning to empathize with to be human beings. They don't need a complicated, sad childhood backstory or multiple subplots to make this resonate with people, to make this an important story to tell. This is a story about Christian Bale's character learning to value these people as human beings with human souls, at least based on the description that Marianne is giving in order to throw shade on this movie. The Native Americans here are strictly one-dimensional, which is all Blocker's redemption requires. So Marianne is speaking directly to the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is that we don't need to flesh out these secondary characters to understand that what Captain, let's get the character's name, what Captain Joseph Blocker is doing is evil, and that that it would be better for Joseph Blocker to change his heart, to change his ways, and to see other human beings as human beings deserving of dignity and respect. To Marianne Johnson, that is precisely the problem. She thinks the redemption story of a white man is inherently problematic because it's about a white man. They just need to meet the abuse he deals out on their journey with quiet dignity, and all the better to start thawing his cold, cold heart a little. So obviously, they don't need much in the way of dialogue or character development. They just need to be noble savages. No, it does not reduce Indian characters to noble savages if they are not characterized that much in the context of the movie. It is enough if they are human beings. And this is just a restatement of the same point that Marianne thinks that the movie shouldn't have been about Christian Bale and his redemption. Essentially, she thinks it should have been about the Native Americans, and is showing resentment at the idea of a redemption story. But then we also have some marauding Comanches who are even less than one-dimensional, and who certainly aren't noble. They are faceless bogeymen who swap in and kill. That's what they did that to Mrs. Rosalie Quaid, Rosamund Pike, a nice white lady the travelers encounter, who is the only survivor of a Comanche attack on her family. So, once again, why do we have to point out that this character is white, that this actress is white? What is the importance of that? Well, in Marianne Johnson's mind, it's important because Marianne Johnson is a casual bigot who hates people based on their race and skin color and thinks it's okay to express this openly in her movie reviews. So these Comanches are raiding and killing people. Okay, question, Marianne. Did any Comanches in history ever raid and kill innocent people? Did that ever happen? Were there any innocent women and children who have ever been murdered by, and maybe raped by, Comanche raiding parties in our history? You're the one who is objecting to the noble savage stereotype. So do you then understand that the noble savage stereotype is a fiction and it doesn't reflect history? That, of course, in history, plenty of Native Americans engaged in war or the subjugation of women or slavery or abuse or murder in times of war, that this is a trait of the human race, that all colors and creeds and races and ethnicities and nationalities, we've always been waging war and being brutal to each other during times of war? Or do you think that there were no Comanche raiding parties that have ever existed or ever killed anybody? Which is it? You can't simultaneously say that the noble savage stereotype is problematic and that the representation of Native Americans murdering, I'm not going to use the term Native Americans, of these Comanche American Indians murdering people. You can't also say that simultaneously is racist in the opposite direction of having them be unnoble savages. If they existed in history, it's okay for them to be portrayed in a historical, fictionalized movie. So, just after calling special attention to this character being a white lady, it goes on to describe how Black Hawk and Yellow Hawk show compassion to Mrs. Quaid. And this is what speaks to Captain Joseph Blocker. And Blocker has to make an alliance with Yellow Hawk and Black Hawk in order to fight off these Comanche raiding parties. The Cheyenne, who are literally in white man's chains, still have the kindness to honor the white lady's grace, which is loud and heartrending if the savages can't be gentle with a white lady, just like Blocker is. Maybe they are not so bad after all. So now, this continues the same theme. What Marianne is objecting to is Blocker seeing an act of humanity on the part of Yellow Hawk and Black Hawk towards this widow, being touched by it, and reconsidering his bigotry towards Indians, thinking that, beginning to recognize that these are people with souls that he should empathize with and treat with dignity. And that's problematic because it's a story from the white man's perspective. Still, there's a long way to go for Blocker on one. Okay, then it talks about a subplot that I'm not going to get into. And then it talks about him being a stoic character who is kind of maintains his sort of his firm face while wrestling between these two extremes of kind of hating and fighting the Indians and loving and empathizing with the Indians. Quote, "The essential American soul is hard, isolate, stoic, and a killer. It has never yet melted.
D.H. Lawrence wrote in 1923, and Cooper uses the quote to open his film. But ha on Lawrence, here's Blocker's soul starting to melt way back in 1892. Granted, the American soul has barely budged since, but it's only been 126 years. Give it time. So, this quote, okay, the essential American soul is hard. Yep, good. Isolate. I'd say individualist, but yep, good. Stoic. Yeah, having an ability to deal with negative emotions, I think that's good. And a killer. Yep, let's kill people who try to kill us. Let's defend ourselves. Let's not tolerate evil. Let's kill the people who want to hurt us or destroy us or harm our families and our innocent people. Amen. Let's never stop being killers. That's what led us. That's the reason we were able to break the axis of evil. It has never yet melted, and may it never do so. So, in the context of what Marianne Johansson is saying, Americans are cold, heartless bastards, and we've never changed, and it's been 126 years, and Americans today are cold, heartless bastards, just like the evil white colonialists who murdered Native Americans. So, Marianne Johnson, I'm going to be doing a bit. So let's see here. How many casual instances of bigotry were there in this article? Well, the whole article was one, but if I had to give a number to it, I'd say, let's say the number of the instances of the word white as a pejorative. So 13 instances of the word white, of specially calling out the skin color of actors and characters in this movie as a way of making a pejorative point. And I gotta be careful not to dox myself as I do a quick little transition here. Okie dokie. So, I think we need to start, this is the third episode of Adventures in Fake News. I think we need to start a little fake news award all our own on the #1 Marmaduke fan show. And I think we will be honoring outstanding contribution to the fields of fake news and of the of casual bigotry and racism in Hollywood movie reviews. So, Marianne Johansson is the first recipient of this award. And so, in her name, we will be making a donation to a worthy cause. I believe that for the Fake News Awards, we will be honoring a politician who is less racist than Barack Obama. So, in honor of Marianne Johnson, I hereby donate $1 per every instance of the use of the word white as a pejorative in her fake news movie review. $13. Continue. Oh, shoot. Well, I can't do this without doxing myself. So, you have the #1 Marmaduke fan pledge that our boy, real Donald Trump, will be the recipient of this donation in honor of Marianne Johansson's fake news movie review. $1 per racist slur. I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. Why don't you like, comment, and subscribe? It's the only show on YouTube where we throw our money away for the entertainment of you, the YouTube audience. # not monetized. I'll catch you later.